Good afternoon, this is Sean Golding, here to discuss the very basics of your different offshore voluntary disclosure options for 2022 in order to get into compliance for prior years. Even though, from a baseline perspective, even though they got rid of OVDP, which was the prior Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program, an offshoot of the traditional voluntary disclosure, when people use the term offshore voluntary disclosure, they're generally just referring to getting into compliance for undisclosed foreign assets, accounts, investments, and income. It doesn't necessarily mean the OVDP or the Voluntary Disclosure Program, which is primarily for people who are willful. So the reason behind the offshore voluntary disclosure options is that somebody would have missed their prior year reporting requirements, right? They may have some undisclosed overseas bank or investment accounts, FDs, current accounts, investment accounts for mutual funds and CCOVs and things like that. Unreported foreign pension, foreign retirement schemes, life insurance policies that have a cash surrender value. They may have received a large gift from a foreign person or entity, trust distribution, U.S. owner of a foreign trust. It goes on infinitely. If you have something overseas, the U.S. government wants to know about it. You got to report it. If you don't report it, then you have to get into compliance. You don't just want to file forward or go back and file without, kind of doing it secretly. It's called quiet disclosure. If you do that, the Internal Revenue Service has made it known that that's willful. If it was done intentionally, they will go back and they will penalize you, and they will penalize you significantly heavier than they otherwise would have under the program. So why don't we go through some of the more common programs and get an idea of what you may qualify for. So oftentimes you'll hear streamlined procedures. It's probably the most common term or phrase that you'll hear revolving offshore disclosure. And so there's two versions of the program. The main name is Streamlined Filing Compliance Procedures. Streamlined Domestic Offshore Procedures is for taxpayers who don't qualify as foreign residents. Streamlined Foreign Offshore Procedures is for taxpayers who do qualify as foreign residents. Under either one of these programs, the taxpayer has to be non-willful, and they get an opportunity to disclose prior year unreported income, accounts, assets, and investments, 3 years of returns, 6 years of FBARs, or up to 6 years of FBARs. If you've only been a U.S. person for 4 years, you don't have to do 6 years of FBARs, right, just to meet the 6-year standard. Streamlined Domestic, you pay a 5% penalty, and you can only file amended returns. Streamlined Foreign, you can file original returns, and there's no penalties. That's a great program. For some people who don't qualify for Streamlined, or they don't want to pay the 5% penalty, depending on their facts and circumstances, they may have some other options available to them. There's a Delinquent submission procedures. There's two versions of those. There's the Delinquent International Information Return Submission Procedures, DIIRSP, which is primarily for people who have unreported FBAR and other forms like Form 8938, 3520, 5471. Up until November of 2020, it was almost a guaranteed penalty waiver, but the IRS did change that, and now it's not guaranteed. If someone only has FBARs, and they would typically qualify for the Delinquent FBAR submission procedures, I hesitate there for a second, and no unreported income, right? They don't have to really make any modifications to their tax returns. They just missed filing the FBAR. Under the Delinquent FBAR submission procedures, a person may still qualify for the full penalty waiver easier than they would under the other Delinquent program. When someone is not, well, let's not do double negatives, right? If someone can't qualify as non-willful, there, I just did it. If you don't qualify as non-willful, if you can't certify under penalty of perjury that you're non-willful, then you can't do any of these programs we just described. Instead, you would have to do the willfulness program, which is the voluntary disclosure. There used to be an offshoot, OVDP, which was specifically for offshore voluntary disclosure. In September 2018, they terminated that program, but they expanded the traditional VDP, which now includes both offshore and domestic. The penalty is much higher, but what it does is if someone's willful, it will typically avoid any further investigation, and it almost always avoids criminal. To date, we've never had anyone prosecuted for criminality after doing the program. Some inexperienced attorneys, purported experts, will try to sell you that you don't want to do it if you're willful. You just let the statute run out, or they're going to whisk you away, deport you, or remove you. It doesn't work that way. So if you're out of compliance and you need to get into compliance, you want to do it before you file your next tax return. There's all these various programs you can consider. We have lots of free information available on our main websites and our sub-websites. You can always reach out and schedule a reduced fee initial consultation if you think it's appropriate, something we handle here. Again, my name is Sean Golding with Golding & Golding. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.